Hello, everybody. This is Eric Vierthaler of Vierthaler Studios, here once again, back for another episode of Sit Down by the Fire. I'm here with my next special guest. Please introduce yourself.
Just call me Zack Attack.
Alrighty, well, that works for me. And so please tell my audience what exactly is it that you do, like as far as entertainment goes.
I'm a freelance actor and model. Right now, I just do trade for print modeling, but hopefully someday I can make a career out of both. For money right now, I work as a gym as a trainer.
Nice, man. Well, as long as you work hard and persistent about it, and just work hard. I mean, you can achieve anything.
Amen to that, brother.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I checked your IMDb, and I saw that you actually did a medieval Star Wars fan film, and then I got curious about it, and I was trying to see if I could watch it, and then I saw it on YouTube. I actually watched it last night, and yeah, from what I saw, a budget of $7,000, around there at least, for a budget that low, it looked really good. Like honestly, when I found out that was done for only $7,000, I'm like, that does not look like $7,000. I mean, considering that I have seen movies like with that low of a budget, and I could have swore that that was at least like a hundred, like at least a 100 grand. So
Yeah, honestly, I didn't know it was made with that budget. I was just brought in as a background extra when they announced the casting call for it back in 2021. Originally, I wanted to be one of the Jedi's,
makes
but
sense.
but yeah, I got to be a separatist soldier and one of the clone knights. I wanted to say clone trooper, but knight's more appropriate.
Makes sense, yeah. And that was one of the things that I loved about it. Like it felt like a mix of Lord of the Rings, like basically like if Star Wars and Lord of the Rings mated, that's basically what its love child would have been. So
Yeah, well, basically, this movie was just like a retelling of episode three, Revenge of the Sith, where
yeah.
66 came through and the clone troopers turned on the Jedi's. Only in this case, it was through a magic spell, you know.
Yeah, and even what I noticed, like at the very end, like when with that fire, I mean, personally, it reminded me of episode 6. I did not know like if the director intended that or not.
Well, it kind of makes sense because that's how they did it for, like you said, with number 6 went with Vader, Anakin.
Makes sense, yeah. And speaking of Darth Vader, like that medieval Darth Vader costume, I thought that that was extremely cool. And so I'm just curious, do you know like if that costume like was bought online or if they made it just for the movie itself or what?
No, I think they made it for the movie itself. The
Wow.
guys behind it, Tom Bavins. You can follow him on Instagram.
Okay.
His brother, I believe it was. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they made the costume themselves. I even saw it on display, in their apartment a couple of years back, and I was blown away by it.
Wow. I mean, knowing that they made that costume by themselves, that is impressive.
Yeah. Well, it's one thing to like see it for yourself with your own eyes, but then to see
Yeah.
how it was in the film, I just got,
Yeah.
for me, I got a totally different vibe from it.
Oh yeah, I mean certainly. It's like sometimes pictures and even videos of it like just don't do it justice until you actually see it in person. Like that's how I felt when I went to a Titanic I there was like a museum like for the Titanic in Las Vegas that I went to in 2017, I believe, and they actually had a piece of the actual ship. And yeah, like I've seen pictures of the Titanic, of course, and all that, but actually seeing a piece of it up close in person, it was just a much more richer experience actually getting to see it in person, and especially knowing like just how famous that ship is. So
Yeah, that's actually really awesome, man.
oh yeah, certainly. Well, I mean, it's a shame that you didn't get to play one of the Jedi's, but at least that you still got to be a part of it, though.
Yeah, well, for me, I was fairly new to acting, when I got the chance to be part of that cast and crew for that project. But, and I kind of had some prior experience. See, I kind of started my way on the bottom and I'm trying to work my way up, you know.
Right.
So I started like doing background extra work just to get the experience and exposure and know the people.
Uh
And
huh. Certainly.
for me, that project itself was when I got a real feel for what it felt like to be on set for numerous times,
Uh huh.
multiple days, and really getting along with the cast and crew. And then I just decided right there that, yeah, I want to do this more often, because I had a blast with the rest of the cast and crew. They were great, both on and off camera.
Awesome.
Yeah,
So yeah, and so it definitely sounds like that you had a very, very positive experience.
I did.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, I am awesome. Well, I am definitely very happy to hear that you had a good experience making that movie. And so, yeah. So I'm assuming that back when you were a kid or just in your younger years in general, I'm assuming that you probably were a fan of that franchise.
Yes, I did. And I I saw, episode 6 and then one as a very little kid, and then I went to the theaters for some of the others. Uh, the last Star Wars movie I saw in theaters was Rogue One, and for me, that's my favorite movie out of the entire genre. You know, and
Nice. So,
yeah, I can't explain it. Like what drew me to it. I guess as a kid, just lightsabers and all the action.
oh yeah, certainly. And I mean, one of the things that I love about especially the original trilogy, I especially love like Darth Vader's arc. Throughout the original movies, like how he starts off as the bad guy, but then during Episode 6, like is when that he redeems himself, and then like he saves Luke, and that's what I love about the original trilogy. Is just it's just such a powerful arc.
Yeah, but I guess if you go back and rewatch the movies, for the character of Anakin Skywalker, I think like at those different ages or points in his life, from like 1 to 3 to becoming Darth Vader. Like as a kid, I think he was just like sad, and then in episode 2, he was like, I guess, confused. And then in 3, he was angry. And then from the point where he was Darth Vader, deep down, I think he was just suffering.
Mhm. Certainly, yeah. And then, especially with that in mind, knowing that his arc comes full circle in Return of the Jedi, it just makes it that much more powerful, knowing that everything that he went through throughout his entire life.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that that's one of the reasons why that Darth Vader became such an iconic villain. I mean, it's not just with his backstory, but it's with his look and that iconic voice with James Earl Jones. I mean, sadly, James
Peace.
Earl, yeah, may he rest in peace. I mean, yeah, he was not 93, but it still sucks.
Yeah.
It really does. And yeah, and I don't know if you know this. Originally, James Earl Jones wasn't even going to be the voice of Darth Vader. The original guy that they had, he definitely didn't sound as intimidating as James Earl Jones. And then the filmmakers were like, okay, this voice isn't intimidating enough. So, and then they wanted to find somebody who had a more intimidating voice, and then they found James Earl Jones. And at that time, like he was not a well-known actor, and well, the rest is history, as they say.
Yeah, yeah. Well, one thing I think is kind of funny that they did with Star Wars that they've done with a lot of movie franchises is like they showed like a few like different movies all together as a story, but then they're making more of them, but starting like from the beginning beforehand. You know, like they did with Star Wars, and they did with Lord of the Rings, and Harry Potter, and now it looks like they might be trying to do it with the Hunger Games movies. You know.
Yeah, which honestly, I'm really not surprised that they're doing that as well. I mean, since that those are big name franchises, and of course, they already have that big, like they already have that built-in audience with it, and so, and yeah, and I mean, ultimately, I get it, and I mean, people who make movies, they have bills that they have to pay too, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, so I can see by your poster behind you, I can see that you are also a big horror fan.
Oh yeah. Love it.
Awesome. So, would you have like a favorite horror movie or a favorite horror franchise?
Well, I kind of like them all, like the originals, you know, like Friday the 13th, Halloween, and
Uh
Night
huh.
Street. But I think my most favorite would have to be the Scream franchise. I was actually at a Texas Frightmare weekend back in May of this year, and I got to meet Nev Campbell, David Arquette,
Oh,
and Kane Hodder. You
that
know,
must have been so
Hodder.
awesome.
Yeah, I even dressed up as Ghostface for that convention. I bought a authentic Scream costume from a store not too far from where I live that looks much like the ones used in the movies, not like those cheap ones they've been selling at Party City for years.
Yeah, yeah. The ones at Party City, it's definitely one of those things where you get what you pay for.
Well, it's nothing like the robes at least. They're nothing like the ones that were used in the movies, you know.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely one of those knockoffs, but hey, they're just trying to cash in on it.
Yeah, but what I like, I don't know if I said this, but I think my most favorite would be Scream because, unlike a lot of the other horror franchises that I mentioned, you don't really know who the killer is in Scream until the climax. So there's actually a mystery, a motive behind it, you know, and I kind of like mysteries. Probably
Oh
because
yeah,
probably because I grew up watching Scooby Doo.
funny. It's so funny that you mentioned Scooby Doo because I actually was just about to say the same thing. Like basically, it's kind of like Scooby Doo. So it's kind of like in a weird way that you read my mind.
Really, really
And
much alike.
yeah, and it's ironic considering that one of the actors from Scooby Doo also is in the original Scream.
Yeah, Matthew Lillard. Well,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then
Matthew Lillard and Skeet Ulrich and a lot of the other actors and actresses from the Scream movies were at this year's Texas Frightmare, but I didn't get to meet them. But
that's
hopefully
a
next year.
that's a shame. Well, there's always next time, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, and with that Texas Frightmare, don't they have that in like Dallas or Austin, Texas? I can't really remember exactly.
Irving, Texas. They have it. The last couple of years, they've had it at the Irving Convention Center, but these conventions are getting more and more crowded every year, so they might have to look to finding bigger places.
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, especially considering all of the guests that they've had, like Kane Hodder. I mean, Kane Hodder like is one of the biggest horror movie actors out there. So,
But him and Tony Todd too,
yep, Tony Todd and yep, him, Tony Todd and Robert England.
or Danielle Harris.
Yep, Danielle Harris, and yeah, and I don't know if she was at Texas Frightmare, but I did see that Jamie Lee Curtis actually has done a few horror cons too, which is pretty surprising that she would. But yeah, according to my research, the reason why that she did it, even though she doesn't like horror movies, but she did it because of like charity, and she was trying to raise money like for a charity. So
Yeah, but to answer your question, yeah, Danielle Harris was at Texas Frightmare this weekend, but I actually met her at the store where I bought the Scream costume last year. She was there last October. It's called Frightmare Collectibles.
oh,
The guy,
nice.
yeah, the guy who runs the place, he's associated with Texas Frightmare Weekend, and yeah, she was really nice. A lot shorter than me, which sometimes feels a little weird, you know. And
Yeah.
but we got yeah, she signed autographs, did photos, everything, and we talked a little bit. But she's a really nice woman. You'd like her.
Oh yeah, I mean certainly so, and I mean that's the exact same thing that I've heard about all these people who have met her. I mean, every encounter that I've heard of people who have met her, everyone said that yeah, that she's a super nice person, and yeah, and that's also what I've heard about her. I've heard that she's pretty short.
Hmm.
Yeah, like I don't remember how short exactly, but you know, I guess in most of the movies that she's in, I guess that you could never really tell.
Well, I'm 6 foot two, so you know I'm used to people being a bit smaller than me.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly how my life has been. I mean, I am exactly 6 foot tall, and so you're just a little bit taller than I am. But yeah, I mean, even back when I was in kindergarten, even when I would sit down like on the chair and I would have my legs underneath the chair, my legs actually would lift the table up. And so even my kindergarten days, I was tall.
Yeah, story of my life.
Yeah, I know exactly how that goes. Yeah, and so yeah, so I'm assuming like that was Scream. I'm assuming that you have heard the news about Scream 7, like about how Nave Campbell's gonna come back for it.
Yeah, I mean I've heard different stories, you know, but I am I am excited for it. You know, I'm curious to see how it goes because I guess the one thing I'm curious to know is if you really think about it, Scream 5 and 6 kind of followed the same pattern as Scream 1 and 2.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
it took it to a whole different level. And then one would assume that with Scream 7, it would kind of follow the same pattern as Scream 3, like something we thought of in the past wasn't true, you know? So, like, you know, past comes back to bite you in the ass, like Randy said. And what a lot of people are talking about now is maybe Matthew Lillard's character, Stu Macher, actually being alive after all these years, you know, which I kind of find hard to believe. But then again, it's a movie, so they can do whatever they want.
Yeah, and honestly, I actually thought that they were going to bring him back in Scream 5. I totally was expecting that during that like end reveal of finding out who the killer is. I genuinely thought that it was going to be him, and I was surprised when I saw that it wasn't him. And but I definitely do like how Scream 5 addressed like the toxic fandom. I mean, I thought that that was a I thought that that was a very clever way to like update it and all that. I mean, unfortunately, every fandom's going to have that, which is a shame. But yeah, I mean, I totally do agree with you. Even though that I thought he was going to come back for Scream 5, I found that hard to believe, considering that he had a TV. You know,
Smashed on his head, and it looked like he was electrocuted afterwards. But then again, I mean, they brought back Skeet Ulrich as Billy Loomis, even though he wasn't actually there. He was just a figment of uh, Melissa Barrera's character, Samantha Carpenter's imagination, because she turned out to be his daughter, you know.
yeah. So I can imagine that if they do bring him back, either they'll do some insane mental gymnastics and explain how he survived that, kind of like what happened with Hans in Fast and the Furious 9, or they'll do something like what they did with Skeet.
Yeah, they also did the same thing with Gal Gadot's character in Fast X or whatever it was.
Yeah, I mean,
Honestly, I kind of stopped being interested in the Fast and Furious saga after number seven. Not because Paul Walker died, but it's just like they went from being street racers to professional thieves to taking on terrorists and assassins. Like all of a sudden, they're the Avengers. Really?
and especially in the ninth movie where they put a car in outer space, I'm like, okay, that's just pushing it.
Yeah,
That was cringe.
yeah. But going back to Scream, I mean, what might be a little bit interesting is if like maybe Nev Campbell's character Sydney is maybe dealing with a cult, who
Yeah,
loves
yeah.
the Scream franchise, or maybe they just hate her for no reason, or or maybe they're dealing with a killer who's actually killing Ghostface or stab movie enthusiasts, kind of like what happened in the opening of Scream 6, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah.
But maybe it might make a sense after that to maybe continue it like with her kids or something, because in Scream 5, when Dewey calls her, she's like taking a run with her two babies.
Hmm. So yeah, so it definitely is possible since that some time has passed since a Scream 5. I mean, her kids probably would be like at least like I imagine preschool age. So yeah, and so what they could do is pull like a Halloween 4 also, like and have like the killer go after a kid, which I think that would make it a lot more intense.
Yeah, yeah,
But yeah, and I mean they certainly could go that route. I mean it definitely would take balls.
yeah.
Yeah, and so yeah, just out of curiosity, was there like a particular movie that you saw like at a younger age like that inspired you to like to have your passion for movies and to get into acting and all that?
Well, it's kind of hard. I'd have to really think. Well, I remember being more afraid of monsters than guys with masks as a kid. I think because, like I said, I watched Scooby Doo growing up. Like, I actually thought Gremlins were scarier than Michael Myers. And then, but I think the biggest thing horror movies did for me was they taught me to not really be afraid of a lot of stuff. It teaches you to toughen up, or there's things you can actually take from horror movies and apply it to real
Hmm.
life. Like, I saw a post on Facebook once a few weeks ago, and it was what's a rule to surviving a horror movie that you apply to real life? And I had a couple on the top of my mind, but the one I put in the comments was never pick up a hitchhiker when traveling.
Yeah.
But I think another one that would be tied to that is never move into a place where people were murdered.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, those two are very, very good ones. I mean, going to the hitchhiker one, there was one time I was on a road trip and I, just popped in a podcast. I do not remember what the podcast was, but it was a story about how this guy picked up a hitchhiker and and they were really nice to the hitchhiker and got him food and all that, gave him a place to stay and so then later on the hitchhiker then called that person from some number or phone like where they can't trace it or whatever, and then they said, yeah, originally I was planning on to murder you, but then with how nice you were to me, it got me to reconsider it, And then they said, yeah, next time, never pick up a hitchhiker ever again. And when I heard that, like my jaw dropped. I was like, I just imagine like if you were in that person's shoes receiving that phone call and then you heard about how somebody who you were nice to originally was planning on to murder you, but then they decided to spare your own life. Oh my gosh, like when I heard that podcast, my heart stopped for that person.
That is something.
Yeah, like yeah, and so when you said never pick up hitchhikers, I mean, that's definitely 100% true.
Yeah, plus, I mean, if you've seen movies, picking up a hitchhiker leads to trouble. I mean, The Hitcher, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, House of a Thousand Corpses, and this including originals and remakes for the
Yep,
first
yep.
two I mentioned.
Certainly, yeah. And yeah, and I also feel like horror movies also get you to confront your mortality as well. And yeah, and I mean like horror movies oftentimes they are a lot more deep and complex like than a lot of people realize.
Yeah, and plus, I mean, if you, we think differently when we're kids, but as you get,
Certainly.
and you mature, then all of a sudden, maybe something that scared you when you were a kid is like, now it's like, really? I found that scary, or geez, I remember him being a lot more frightening.
Oh yeah, certainly yeah. Like I remember when I was a kid when I saw like when I saw the original Aladdin as a kid and Beauty and the Beast, like those two, both of those movies scared the crap out of me. And I mean, especially Beauty and the Beast, like during the first half of the movie, like where the Beast is much more angry. When I was a kid, that scared me so much that I couldn't even finish it. And yeah, and it actually wasn't until when I was a teenager, like was when I finally was able to actually finish watching that movie. And yeah, and so and then when you say that, it scared you as a kid then, and then not so much as an adult. Yeah, I mean that's something that I relate to. I mean, I even met somebody like who said that Batman and Robin even scared the crap out of them as a kid.
Yeah, or plus, like, how many times have, or no, let me rephrase, how many people have been freaked out by certain horror movies like Stephen King's It or Gremlins or Arachnophobia,
Yeah, and what I think makes it work so well, like, is the fact that Pennywise actually uses your own fear against you. And I mean, considering that not everyone is afraid of the exact same thing. Like, there are people who are afraid of heights. There are some who are afraid of spiders, snakes, or whichever else. And knowing that Pennywise like will use whatever it is that you personally are afraid of against you, I think that that is what made him such a terrifying character.
Yeah, well, yeah, you're not wrong, but don't forget, I mean, he liked to feed on kids, and things like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, true, yeah.
Making them scaring them first, it made them taste better, because I guess fear has like a scent to it or something, and plus, if you really even think about it, have you ever seen Jeepers Creepers?
Yes, I have. Yes,
If you really think about it, they pretty much got the idea of the creeper from Pennywise.
makes sense. I mean, it's something that I never really thought of until you uh, something that I never thought of until you pointed out. But now they pointed out, it does make sense because I believe in Jeepers Creepers, they say how like the creeper only appears like so and so amount of years, I believe, which is the same thing as Pennywise.
He come Yeah, well, the creeper, he comes to our world like every 23rd spring, and then for 23 days he gets to eat, and whatever he eats becomes a part of him, like he'll eat your eyes so he can have eyes, things like that. And he loves the smell of fear, fear. makes them taste better, you know.
Oh
Same with
yeah.
Pennywise, you know, well, Pennywise is restricted to the make believe town of Derry, you know, and he only comes once every like 27 years, and he
Mhm, yeah.
feeds on children, you know, but he likes to scare them first before he eats them.
Yeah, which I mean, going back to what you said, I mean, because he scares them, it makes them that much more tasty, and man, especially knowing that it's children, children get scared a lot more easily than teenagers and adults do.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's probably why that Pennywise usually goes after children, and that's probably why that in It Chapter Two and just in the book in general, like when they become adults, it probably was harder for Pennywise to go after them as adults, but yet he probably still had all of that trauma uh, within them from their childhood, like to his advantage, though.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so speaking of it, there was the original Tim. There actually was the Tim Curry one, and there was the one with Bill Skarsgård. So I guess in just your own opinion, do you prefer the Tim Curry one or do you prefer the one with Bill?
Honestly, I think they both did really well, but
Mhm.
Tim Curry, I mean, he kind of started it, you know, and
Yeah, yeah,
really think about it. I mean, Bill Skarsgård was more CGI'd, you know, but it looked more realistic than some of the other things they've come out with lately using computer graphics and stuff, you know.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And
But
what,
I think Bill Skarsgård's Pennywise was more like the one described it in the book, you know, as opposed to Tim Curry's.
yeah, which makes sense. You know, they're trying to be as faithful as they could. And I mean, oftentimes a movie based off a book is not always going to be 100% accurate. You know, it could be because of behind the scenes circumstances or just whichever circumstance that there is.
Yeah, but I never finished reading it. You know, life got in the way, and plus that book's as big as a fucking dictionary. Pardon the language, but
Oh, that's all right.
I remember reading a few books that were made into movies, and then they did more of them like in the future. But the remakes that they did were more like the book. I mean, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory,
Uh-huh,
or
yeah.
Where the Red Fern Grows. You know, like well, I know in the '70s they did Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory with Gene
Hmm.
Wilder. It was
Yep.
nothing like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And then Tim Burton did Charlie and the Chocolate Factory in 2005 with Johnny Depp, you know, much more like the book, you know. And same with Where the Red Fern Grows, you know, they had one done in the '70s. It was nothing like the book. Then they did one in the late '90s, early 2000s or something, and was a lot more like the book.
Yeah, and when the first when like the first one like with Bill Skarsgård came out, I tried to read the book at that time, but I have really bad ADHD, and so for me to read that entire book, that thick of a book, it took effort.
Yeah.
And yeah, and you mentioned Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. According to my research, Johnny Depp was not the first choice. One of the original choices was Dwayne the Rock Johnson.
Yeah, right.
Maybe as an Oompa Loompa.
On steroids.
Yeah, on steroids, yeah. But as Willy Wonka, I mean, I mean, what I think would have been really funny, I mean, if they did go that route, like, say if they did cast him as Willy Wonka, like if they would have had him say, "Do you smell what I'm cooking up in the chocolate factory?" And the other choice was Marilyn Manson. That would have been horrifying.
Yeah.
And the other choice, according to rumor, was Adam Sandler.
Hmm. I guess if he grew his hair out a little bit longer, then he could have probably pulled it off.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting choice. I never would have thought of Adam Sandler as Willy Wonka, but I mean, obviously that's not what happened.
Yeah.
But yeah, there were some other choices too. It was just those three choices like that really caught my attention, especially the one about Dwayne Johnson.
Yeah, but if you really think about it, I mean, Johnny Depp and Helena Bonham Carter are literally like the face of the Tim Burton franchise. I mean,
Oh,
how many
certainly, yeah.
movies have they been in together by Tim Burton, you know?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it even was that way, like with Michael Keaton for the longest time. And then, Tim Burton and then started to use Johnny Depp a lot more often than he did Michael Keaton. And yeah, and it got to the point like where people weren't even surprised. Like if there was a new Tim Burton film coming out, they automatically would go, "Yep, it's gonna star Helen Bonham Carter and it's gonna star Johnny Depp."
Yeah, well, believe it or not, someone shared. I saw a post once on Facebook about a supposed live action remake of the one Tim Burton movie, Corpse Bride, but casting Bill Skarsgård as Johnny Depp's character,
Hmm.
Victor. And I forget who they decided for some of the other cast members, but I saw it and I was like, you know what? That might actually work, you know?
Yeah.
But I'm not dissing Tim Burton at all because he's one of my favorite directors of all time. You know, like his
Mhm.
movies are some of my favorite. You know, it's a dream of mine to one day be in a movie by him.
Yeah. Well, hey, as long as you work hard, you know, you can achieve anything that you set your mind to.
Yeah,
And yeah, Bill Skarsgård as that role in Corpse Bride, it's one of those things I never would have thought of it, but it does make sense. It's because that he has those eyes.
he's got the eyes, he's got the look and everything. You know, and heck, it might even do him justice because I heard he did a piss poor job in The Crow.
I haven't seen it, so I can't say anything about it. But from
Me,
what I could tell online, a lot of people took issue with his design, with the tattoos and the shorter hair, and yeah, I get it. The tattoos, it reminds people of the Jared Leto Joker and the Crow. I just feel like he should have longer hair because I just feel like that adds to like the whole gothic feel to it.
yeah, well, I mean, I wasn't gonna see it anyway because no one will ever be Brandon Lee, you
Oh
know.
yeah,
But excuse me. But the thing that, in my experience, it's like, you know, the movie franchise really isn't what it used to be. Because let's face it, there's no such thing as a new idea anymore. Nowadays, all you have are spoofs and remakes. You know, I'm not saying they haven't made any good movies recently because
yeah,
they
yeah, yeah.
it's just, you know, it's one of those things where it's like sometimes I wish I was living in the 20th century, you know, because that was a time when the movie business was shining, you know.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, just last year alone, like for the first time in a long time, where the highest grossing movies were not sequels, were not remakes, and also like were not superhero movies. So yeah, last year was a really interesting time for film. And I mean, even one of the acting teachers who I had this year, like who lives in LA, she was saying that, yeah, I mean, a lot of us were expecting that Barbie was going to be a hit, but not that big of a hit. And I mean, even I was surprised about how big of a hit Barbie was. And yeah, and And yeah, and I mean, it definitely would be nice, like, to have a lot more newer franchises, which is why that I feel like that why the Terrifier franchise like has gotten attention because a lot of people who I have encountered have all said yes, finally, it's finally like a new horror movie icon.
Yeah, I know of Terrifier, but I haven't seen any of the movies because I hate clowns. But I've thought about it, you know.
Yeah, they are brutal. I mean, especially Terrifier 2. Like, I heard that at a screening of Terrifier 2, somebody actually fainted because they were so overwhelmed by how violent that it was. I've seen the movie. I can see why.
That's funny because, well, I've gone and seen some horror movies in theaters, and I was working at a dine-in movie theater when the very first It movie came out in 2017, and I remember seeing some audience members leaving the movie and not coming back because it was too scary for them, you know, especially like young teenage girls, you know. But I remember going to the premiere of The Conjuring and Annabelle Creation, you know,
Uh huh.
and people got up from their seats and left, and they never came back, you know. And and going back to what you said about Jamie Lee Curtis not hardly coming to conventions but doing it for charity, and when was it in 2019. I went to Fan Expo Dallas convention that year, and one of the celebrities who was there was Linda Blair from The
Oh, wow.
Exorcist, and yeah, I got her to sign a 10 by 12 poster of the original poster from the movie, you know,
Wow.
and
That's awesome.
all the proceeds she was doing was going towards an organization that helps animals, especially dogs, because that's something she's passionate about.
Yeah, which is something that I can relate to, is because I am definitely a very big dog person too. And so yeah, and I mean, I honestly never even knew that about her. And so yeah, and so just hearing that about her definitely makes me respect her that much more. But
Yeah,
yeah, I can imagine that she wouldn't like that scene in the original Halloween, like when Michael Myers kills that dog.
yeah, and then he eats it afterwards.
Yeah, especially in Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, like where it's much more intense, like when he eats that dog.
Yeah, yeah, that's the problem. You know, a lot of these like horror movies nowadays, it's like they rely mainly on the blood and the gore and all that stuff, you know. But there's no like real good story or scare behind it, you know. It's a it's just not recommended for people who are squeamish, you know, like those remakes of Evil Dead, you know. They went from
Yeah,
being horrifyingly funny to just like really disgusting and gory.
yeah, like the one part in the 2013 movie that made me really cringe was when like when like she cut her tongue with that knife and she like licked it. Oh
Box.
god. Yeah, and even in Evil Dead Rise with that scene with like the cheese grater. Oh, that was painful.
Yeah, like I'm into horror, but even I have my limits. You know, there's certain things I don't like to see.
Yeah, that's how I felt when I saw the Human Centipede. That movie I felt like really pushed my limits. And have you ever seen that movie?
No, but I know of it, and they made two more after it.
Yeah, when I first heard about that movie, it was from my friend Kenny at that time, and he told me that it was nasty. When he said nasty, I thought he meant nasty as in like super violent, bloody, and gory. And I thought it was going to be about some half human, half centipede monster that attacks people. But then I saw the movie, and oh, mentally, I've never been the same ever again. You can probably understand why after knowing the concept.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I mean, a lot of people I've met, a lot of people I've met have said the same thing, like where they're more fans of like the psychological horror, and yeah, and then it seems to me that out of all horror movie icons, it seems that Ghostface probably is your favorite one.
Well, yeah, but I also like Jason Voorhees and Michael Myers and some of the others. And I mean, heck, I've been watching the Chucky series on USA for the last couple of years.
Nice.
I'm still waiting to find out if they're going to do a season 4 or not.
I Yeah, and I mean, I've been watching the Chucky show as well, and yeah, and I definitely really have enjoyed it. It was great to see Alex. It definitely was great to see Alex Vincent come back for Cult of Chucky, but you could tell that he didn't act for a while, so his acting was a little bit off. But in the TV show, I definitely feel like that his acting definitely did get better, though.
Right. Was he the guy who played Andy Barkley?
Yes, yes.
Right, right. And I didn't realize this until afterwards, but the actress who played Nika Pierce in the last two Chucky movies before the series came out is Brad Dourif's daughter, which
Yep. Yep.
explains why she nailed his laugh so good and his accent.
Yeah, which makes sense. And yeah, I also even thought that she even nailed like that evil smile too.
Yeah, that too. There was the smile.
And yeah, and I mean it makes sense. And yeah, as far as what I heard, Brad Dourif is fully retired from acting now, but he said that he will continue doing. Excuse me. He said that like for Chucky though, he said that he certainly will continue doing the voice of that.
Yeah,
But yeah, there also was that 2019 reboot that had Mark Hamill in. Did you ever watch that?
yeah, but I didn't go and see it in theaters. I waited until it was available online, and I thought it was okay. I mean, it doesn't compare to the original, but
Yeah.
thing I definitely knew in the back of my mind or wondered when I saw the trailer for it was like, okay, is this Chucky possessed by an undead serial killer, or is it just an artificially intelligent doll with a few screws loose?
Yeah, which it makes sense that they would update it like to be where it wasn't possessed by a serial killer and it was more artificial intelligence. I mean, considering that nowadays that we are in the age of artificial intelligence, so it does make sense.
Yeah, but then they used that same idea for when they did Megan.
Yeah, which is funny because that's the most common thing that I've heard. Like a lot of people I've met like have said that Megan is a ripoff of the 2019 version of Child's Play. I mean, I don't know if it was intended that way. It might be a coincidence. I'm not really sure, but yeah. So in your own opinion, do you think it was a coincidence, or do you think that they intended on it?
They intended on it because, like I said, there's literally no such thing as a new idea anymore.
Yeah,
Nowadays,
fair.
for spoofs and remakes.
Yeah, fair. Yeah, and yeah, and I mean, I even noticed that there were like some similar plot beats as well. Like I believe in the 2019 Child's Play that there was a scene like where Chucky killed one of the Barkley's pets, and even in Megan, there was that scene like where Megan even killed that. I
Maybe.
believe it was yeah, 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 and so yeah, I mean, but yeah, it was definitely a very interesting thing that happened in there. I mean, people even say the same about Kim of the White Lion and the Lion King.
Yeah. Honestly, I feel like Hollywood and Disney has really gotten carried away with these live action movie remakes ever since Cinderella. You know, mean, some of them were okay, but it's like, jeez, is it ever gonna stop? I mean,
Yeah.
I don't blame the actors and actresses in these movies. I mean, they're just trying to make a living, but it's just the writers, producers, directors behind it. It's like, give me a break.
Yeah, man, especially with as those live action remakes went on, you could definitely tell the formula that they were using, like where basically it's the same movie, but they change a few things around and they just make it longer. And a lot of the most important things from the original movie end up being changed, like how in the Lion King remake, um, they cut the part where Rafiki says, "Oh, it doesn't matter. It's in the past. The past can hurt, but I either can learn from it or run from it." And then in the Little Mermaid remake, um, I feel like that they hurt King Triton's arc, like about how he learns that not all humans are bad, considering that it was Prince Eric, like who was the one like who defeated Ursula. But then in the remake, it's actually Ariel, like who's the one who defeats Ursula, and I just really felt like that ruined King Triton's arc.
Yeah,
Yeah, and even in the Beauty and the Beast remake, like where, like when, so in the original his arc like for the Beast was it was much more profound in the original movie. It was because he was much more angry during the beginning, and in the remake he was mad, but it wasn't as intimidating. And I just felt like that really hurt his arc.
yeah,
And even what I noticed, you might have noticed this too in a lot of the remakes, they would get people who can't sing.
yeah. The last live action Disney movie I saw was Aladdin.
Yeah, I saw that one too, and yeah, Naomi Scott, I felt like did a I felt like that she did an incredible job singing. I mean, Mina Masood, he was decent. Will Smith, I feel like he's more so built for rapping than he is for singing.
Oh, no doubt.
Yeah, definitely. And from what I heard, Will Smith wasn't even their first choice. It was either going to be Gabriel Iglesias or Jim Carrey.
But I Jim Carrey can't sing, can he?
Uh, I believe that in The Grinch, I believe that he did sing for that. But Gabrielle, though, I don't know if he can sing. I genuinely have no idea if he can or not. I mean, if he can, well, then that's good on him.
Yeah.
But yeah, out of the two, who do you think would have been the better choice?
Uh, Probably the first guy, Gabriel Iglesias.
Yeah, especially since that he does have that look, and yeah, he also is funny, but he's funny in his own way.
Yeah, sometimes I get the feeling Jim Carrey tries way too hard to be funny, even though it works. Sometimes it still, he's not naturally funny.
Yeah, and yeah, and I mean, I mean, also at the end of the day, I mean, comedy also is a very sub. I mean, comedy also is a very subjective thing as well. So yeah, I mean, it definitely would have been different. It would have been interesting to have Jim Carrey be the genie. But yeah, Gabrielle, though, I definitely feel like that he would have captured at least the physical look of the original genie.
Yeah.
And yeah, so when you saw the Aladdin remake, what exactly were your thoughts on it? I mean, did you enjoy it or what?
Um, well, I thought some of the people they brought in as the cast members, like the guy who plays Aladdin, and especially bringing in Naomi Scott as Jasmine, I thought they were like really good choices, as far as like the looks and the voices when they sang, you know. Um, but then again, if you saw the cartoon, you know what to expect, or you know how it's going to end. But I thought the nice touch about it was the when Will Smith's genie married Princess Jasmine's friend, whatever her name was, and then had
Yeah,
a
yeah,
had a family with her. You know,
yeah. And I mean, that certainly was something that was not in the original movie. And yeah, and I mean, knowing that he was completely human, like at the end of the movie, which I heard that they tried to do a sequel to, and I'm like, well, if they do Return of Jafar, it would be kind of hard to do that, considering that the genie turned human at the end, unless if they just brought in like a brand new genie afterwards.
yeah,
And yeah, and knowing that it's been 5 years since the Aladdin remake came out, honestly, at this point, I really don't think it's gonna happen.
jeez, I didn't even realize it'd been that long.
I didn't either until until like something on my Facebook came up about it, like how like oh it's been so and so amount of time ever since so and so post that you did, and yeah, 2019 was 5 years ago. That is crazy.
Crazy how much faster time goes by as we get older, isn't it?
Yep, and especially considering that little did we know what would happen just a year later. So none of us had a clue what it was that we had at that time.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I can imagine that, horror conventions and all these movie conventions in general, I can imagine that they got hit. And I mean, they probably were all forced to go online and have meet and greets be online. It's like, yeah, at least you can still meet them, but it's just not the same though, because it would be a much better experience to actually get to meet them in person.
yeah. Well, when the pandemic hit, I was in college at the time, and the classes I was taking went had to change from being on campus to going online,
Mhm.
and I got laid off from my job at the dine-in movie theater,
I'm
and
sorry.
it's okay. Um, and then that year, I planned on going to the Fan Expo Dallas convention of 2020 that year because Nev Campbell, Rose McGowan, and Matthew Lillard were all going to be there. And I actually, you're going to find this hard to believe, but I had my own idea for a Scream 5 movie, and I was going to give it as a gift to Nev Campbell, you know but then of course the convention got canceled and I wasn't able to meet her until like 4 years later. But then they went ahead and already did Scream 5 and 6, and the ironic thing is some of the ideas I had, like in my idea for Scream 5, they used for the one that was released in theaters. Mainly what I thought could be done was that the victims in Scream 5 could be related to the victims from the original franchise.
Which is interesting. I mean, considering that Sam Carpenter actually is related to Sam Loomis. Like,
Billy,
oh wait, sorry, Billy Loomis. Sorry, Billy Loomis from the original Scream. And yeah, I mean, but yeah,
well, also the brother,
coincidence.
the sister were their uncle was Randy from Scream 1, 2, and 3, and the kid who got murdered outside the bar was related to Stu Macher, and the was she lived in Stu Macher's old house.
Yeah, and I mean, isn't that just such a coincidence, huh?
I guess.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I mean, it sucks that you didn't get to meet Nave Campbell 2020. But at least that you got to have your second chance.
Yeah, yeah. Well, honestly, I didn't even know Texas Frightmare Weekend existed until like little a couple of years ago, or maybe I
Oh,
heard it once before, but then forgot about it, and then learned about it, and I was like, "Oh my God, I need to go to this." I
oh
went
yeah,
to I went to it for the
certainly.
first time last year, and I met Sam Raimi, and
Ooh,
I was gonna meet John Carpenter, but didn't get the chance.
that's a
And then yeah, then I went to this one only this year. I made sure to dress for the occasion. I went as Ghostface, and what was really cool was that a lot of people, you'd be amazed how many people dress up and do cosplay for these types of events. And six or seven people who I had never met before, they wanted to take my picture and get pictures with me because they liked my costume.
that is so awesome. And I mean, I can only just imagine that underneath that mask you're wearing, you probably had like the biggest you probably had like the biggest smile on your face.
Actually, I was trying to like be really vigilant because I had limited vision with the mask on, and like
Makes
I
sense,
said,
yeah.
it was so crowded in the exhibit room, like could barely get through without each line being like just filled with people.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's why you didn't get to meet John Carpenter. It's because that probably his lines were just too long. I mean, considering that he directed and he is the one like who created the iconic Halloween theme.
Yeah, but no, it wasn't that. They have a certain way of meeting celebrities at some of these conventions where if you gotta like sign up or pay it in advance to really meet them, and then you'll get a ticket number, and then they call out numbers on the tickets in certain order, and if you're lucky, you might get a chance to meet them, but it's not right away. It could take hours.
So yeah, it's definitely a big
Either
commitment of
wait
your
in
time.
line to meet them or walk around and hope you'll meet them before at the end of the convention.
So yeah, definitely a big commitment of your time and yeah, but yeah, it's a real shame you didn't get to meet John Carpenter because yeah, John is somebody who I would love to meet as well. I mean, considering that, the Halloween theme, like actually, you know, I actually do play the piano, and it actually was the Halloween theme like that actually inspired that.
Oh, that's awesome, man.
Oh yeah, definitely. And
Play
I
the Can you
huh?
play the theme from 28 Days Later?
No, but I certainly can find out though.
Eh.
And yeah, and I even remember at the eighth grade talent show, uh, I did a very unusual gig where a lot of people were singing pop songs and all that, while I chose to play the Halloween theme on the piano, and it caught everyone's attention. And so what we did is that we turned all of the lights off, and we had it in a way like where you didn't know who it was playing that song, and it just added like to the overall mood to it. And then it was my gig that actually got the biggest applause. And then this one girl walked up to me afterwards. She was like, Eric, you're not gonna kill me now, are you? I'm like, thank you for the compliment, but no.
Did you dress up as Michael Myers for the performance?
Originally, I was going to, but then, at the last minute, I decided like to just wear like a dark hoodie. Like this hoodie was so long where you couldn't really see my face. So
So
yeah,
like the Grim Reaper.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, part of me wishes that I wore the Michael Myers costume, but history is history, and that was back in 2008, and people still talk about that, and yeah, and that's why that I want to meet John Carpenter is just so that I can, it's just so that I could tell him that, like to just tell him that I played your song at a junior high, middle school, and I'm really
Hey,
shocked.
cut off.
Oh shoot, the connection. Okay,
Well,
it seems to be better now.
yeah. Well, in a couple of weeks, they're going to be announcing next year's Texas Frightmare weekend and who's already on the list of celebrity guests. I'm keeping my eye out on it to see if there's anyone worth meeting there.
Oh yeah, certainly. Like somebody like I don't know, J- Daniel Harris or Kane Hodder or uh, but yeah, I mean just anybody really. And yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I want to meet John Carpenter is just so that I can tell him the story of when I played his song at the junior high, middle school. And honestly, I'm really shocked that I was able to get away with playing a horror movie theme at a junior high, middle school.
I'm sure plenty of kids at the time had seen Halloween already. You know,
Probably, yeah.
like believe it or not, I was only 9 years old when I first saw Halloween. I was just I was watching TV in my bedroom, and I had just finished up watching a program before it. I think it was that Josh Gates series, Destination Truth, and then Halloween came on right after it. And I just like sat in front of the TV in my bedroom, holding onto a pillow, watching the movie. I didn't look away or close my eyes or anything, but I remember being shocked at the end when his doctor, Samuel Lewis, shot him 6 times and then he fell off the second floor balcony. But
Mm-hmm.
when I checked to see it, his body wasn't there. And I was like, what?
Man, especially that look that like that Sam Loomis had in his eyes, like it just set the mood even that much more perfect. And just hearing that, and yeah, it just sends shivers down your spine. And then you just hear that deep breathing from Michael Myers.
Yeah, I was going to mention that in the deep breathing he had throughout the movie, it was like Darth Vader.
Yeah, funny because I was about to say the exact same thing. I was about to say that it is like Darth Vader, and just by coincidence, they actually did ask Peter Cushing if he wanted to play Dr. Loomis, but he was just in Star Wars the year before, and then he said no. It was because it was an independent film. So yeah, I mean, just a big coincidence, right?
I didn't catch some of that. You cut off again.
Shoot, I'm sorry, but yeah, what I was saying is that it's a big coincidence, like about Michael Myers' deep breathing, like and Darth Vader and all that. It's because Peter Cushing actually was offered the role of Dr. Loomis in the original Halloween, and he was just in Star Wars the year before, and that's why that Peter Cushing said no. It was because that Star Wars was a really big movie, and at that time, Halloween was not a big franchise at that time. Like it was a low budget independent film, and little did he or everyone else know that Halloween would go on to become a big name.
Yeah. And, if you really think about it, a lot of the major horror movie franchises, they had certain ones in it that had nothing to do with the rest. I mean, Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, where was Michael Myers in that, Or Friday the 13th, Part 5, A New Beginning, wasn't really Jason Voorhees killing those people. It was someone pretending to be Jason.
Yeah,
And, Wes Craven's New Nightmare, it wasn't really, Freddy Krueger. It was a demon pattern or copying Freddy Krueger.
Yeah, and yeah, and according to my research for Halloween 3, um, at that time Michael Myers was supposed to be dead in Halloween 2, and then it originally was going to be like an anthology series afterwards, like from there on out. But then Halloween 3 bombed at the box office, and people were complaining about how it didn't have Michael Myers in it. And so then that's why they brought him back for Halloween 4. And then every Halloween movie afterwards, they and then made sure that Michael Myers was a part of it.
Yeah, but then after part 6, Curse of Michael Myers, they've done like kind of all these spin-offs, like they did Halloween 20 years later, Halloween and in those I don't think Halloween 2 through 6 ever really happened, because Laura, Jamie's character Laurie Strode was believed said to be dead,
Mm-hmm.
daughter, you know,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then because Jamie was her daughter at the time, and then they did those most recent ones in 2018, 2019, and 2020,
uh huh, yeah. But yeah, from the research I've done, the reason why that with Halloween H2O, why that they ignored 4, 5, and 6, like it's because that 6 didn't do very well at the box office. And originally, Halloween H2O like was just going to be a direct to video movie, and but then Jamie Lee Curtis and then came on board, which and then gave them the ability like to have it not go straight to DVD, but instead get a theatrical release. And they also wanted like a fresh new start, which and I mean I get it. Halloween 6, it definitely left a lot of questions. And so, yeah, and so I totally get why that they wanted to start fresh. And then they ended up starting fresh yet again after Resurrection with the Rob Zombie movies. And then after that, they started fresh yet again with the 2018 movie in that trilogy. And they probably will start fresh yet again.
Yeah, they've been doing that with a lot of the classic horror franchises. They left it off to where it's like they weren't actually dead, and they could have done more, but instead they started fresh,
Oh, yeah, certainly. Yeah. Like, I've heard people say that the Halloween franchise pretty much is like a choose your own adventure kind of franchise. And yeah, never thought of it that way. But then as soon as somebody said that, I'm like, yeah, that does make sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, out of all the timelines in the Halloween franchise, do you have a personal favorite one?
Um, I I guess if I really think about it, I mean, I think I liked 1 and 2 and 4. You know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, I was shocked, at how number 4 ended with Jamie killing her adoptive mother.
Yeah.
And but then it just kind of didn't really make much sense after it. But at least we got some idea in number 6 to why Michael Myers is unkillable. You know.
Certainly, yeah. And I've heard a lot of people complain about how in part 5, like how with that big twist ending in Halloween 4, they just threw that out the window and that they didn't really follow up on that in part 5.
Yeah.
And yeah, and for Resurrection, I've heard a lot of people complain about like the karate from Buster Rhymes, and I'm not gonna lie, like that scene, like where he says "trick or treat, motherfucker," I laugh every time. And especially how at the end, like how Buster Rhymes electrocutes Michael Myers in his nuts. I laugh every single time at that. But yeah, I mean, for me, I first became a fan of the franchise around the time of like the H2O timeline with H2O and Resurrection. So therefore, the H2O timeline has a special place in my heart. It's because it reminds me of my childhood and all that. But yeah,
And
but yeah,
plus, about the cast members that they've had in there, like other than Jamie Lee Curtis, they had Josh Hartnett and well, what's the actress's name?
I think you're talking about Michelle Williams.
Was it Michelle Williams? I thought it was another one.
Yeah, in H2O, they also had Joseph Gordon-Levitt with a cameo, and he was extremely young at that time.
And Jodie Lynn O'Keefe too. I know she was.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and also even Jamie Lee Curtis's mother, Janet Lee, even she has a cameo like in Halloween H2O.
Oh, you're right. It was Michelle Williams.
Yeah, yeah, I figured so, and I believe it was around the time like of Dawson's Creek. It was around when that show like was really popular at that time, so it makes sense that they would want to cash in on that.
Yeah, the actress I was thinking of, I thought it was Carrie Mulligan.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah,
Yeah, but I've been wrong before, so
yeah, yeah. Well, hey, I mean, yeah, well, hey, I mean, nobody is ever going to be perfect, right?
yeah. But before you ask like what's wanting me to get into acting, I don't know. I guess I kind of like to perform as a kid for my friends and parents. I never did theater because I can't sing, you know. And when I was younger, I always thought you had to go to Hollywood in order to be an actor, you know. But at one of my old jobs, my coworker was an actor at the time, and he introduced me to websites that post casting calls for like your local casting calls. And then I was like, geez, how come I didn't know about this before, you know? And then yeah,
Yeah,
I tried it out, and that's the hard thing, you know. I mean, I didn't start getting into acting until late 2019, you know, but had some luck getting some jobs, you know. But I'm not at a point in my life where I can make a living off of it, you know, because a lot of the projects I've been in, they don't really pay you, you know. And
yeah.
then,
Well, yeah. Well, hey, I mean, going back to what you said, as wait, sorry, going back to what I said, as long as you work hard for it, just be persistent and resilient about it, you certainly can. I mean, all of the big time actors like Morgan Freeman, Jim Carrey, and all of them, every single one of them also went through rejection. You know, they went through rejection, trials, just to get to where they're at. And yeah, and I mean ultimately since that they didn't give up, which is why that they ended up where they're at.
yeah, I'm not saying I'm gonna give up, you know. It's just some have it lucky, you know. They like look at Jenna Ortega, you know, or China Ann McClain, you know, people like that. Look at where they're at, or even Peyton List, you know.
Oh
But
yeah, certainly, and yeah, and I am definitely very glad to hear that like that you don't intend on giving up. And yeah, I mean ultimately the only time when you do fail is only when you surrender. And yeah, and as far as theater, yeah, like a lot of theater does involve singing, but I've actually been in plays where there actually wasn't any singing involved at all. And I guess if you ever want to, I guess if you ever wanted like to take singing lessons, and if that's feasible for your budget, you certainly could if you wanted to.
mm, yeah, not really. I think I'm better in front of a camera than I am in front of like a crowd of people.
which is fair, which is fine. And I mean, yeah, theater acting and film acting, while it is still acting. It is still very, very different. A lot like with theater, you have to be a lot more elaborate with like your body language and all that. Like, since that you want the entire theater to be able to pick up on your body language and all that. While with film though, you don't really need that.
Yeah. Um, but also, what is kind of inspiring that I recently learned about is those who didn't start like they were 40 or past 40. Like Morgan Freeman or Harrison Ford, Samuel L. Jackson. You know.
Yeah, yeah, and heck, and I even heard that Tobin Bell, who is Jigsaw in the Saw movies, he didn't get into acting until he was in his 40s, and then and then finally when he did the original Saw, it was the original Saw like that finally got his name out there, and when he did Saw, he was in his 60s.
Yeah. Well, like, or even Anthony Hopkins, he did a bunch of films at it when he was younger, but I don't think anyone really knew who he was until he played Hannibal Lecter in Silence of the Lambs, you know.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, and I mean certainly, and I mean it just goes to show that as long as you are still alive, you still have your chance.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, exactly. And so it just goes to show like that you shouldn't use age as like you shouldn't use age as a reason like for why that you can't pursue what you want. So yeah, so anyways, I think this is a good time to wrap things up. But yeah, is there any last final things that you want to say?
uh, yeah. Going back to like when you brought up the medieval Star Wars film, Nightmare. Do you think that that project deserves a sequel?
Oh yeah, uh, certainly so. And I mean, it's a very interesting concept, knowing that it's Star Wars, but it's more in medieval times. I mean, I definitely feel like that there's a lot more to be done with that. And oh yeah, thank you for reminding me. I actually was going to ask you. So, do you know if the director himself funded that, or was that from like a film grant, or what?
I have no idea, but well, try if you can, share that film Nightmare with some other people or friends of yours who love the Star Wars franchise. So I think the more people who see it and know about it, some more can be done. If
Oh yeah.
Tom or Hollow Point Holiday Productions does any future projects.
Okay. Yeah. Actually, as a matter of fact, as soon as I get done recording this and I'll upload it to my channel, I actually will make a community tab, and yeah, matter of fact, I also can even make a Facebook post about it.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, man, of course. But yeah, I certainly greatly appreciate you taking time out of your day.
Oh yeah, thanks for having me.
Oh yeah, certainly, of course, and yeah, and I mean, if you want, but yeah, if you want, if you do have an Instagram page or I know you do have Facebook since that's how I found you. But yeah, if you want, I could definitely leave a link for all that, like for people to give you a follow.
Thank you. But if you want to find out more about the Nightmare film, reach out to the guy in charge. His name is Tom Bevins. He's on Facebook and
Okay.
Instagram. You should do a podcast with him. He can definitely give you some more insight.
Okay. Yeah.
I'll even
Sure.
message you his Instagram account.
Awesome, man. Yeah. I certainly greatly would appreciate that.
I'm sure he would too.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean all these questions I have about where he got the funding and all that, and I mean, it would make sense like that he would be the person for me to ask.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, anyways, thank you so much for your time, and yeah, and you all have a fantastic day.
You as well. Thanks for having me on your podcast.
Yeah, yeah, of course, and yeah, you and I certainly will keep in touch.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Of course.